Sepulchres of the dead, graves, tombs, mausoleums, stories of the supernatural, the unexplained, even the truly bizarre, often surround them. I'm Graham Phillips, and these are some of the many such mysteries I've researched. Welcome to Grave Secrets. The Valley of the Kings, near Luxor in southern Egypt, burial place of the rulers of ancient Egypt, kings and sometimes queens, known as pharaohs. Here, on the 26th of November 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter, his financial backer Lord Carnarvon, and Carnarvon's daughter Evelyn opened the entrance to Tutankhamun's tomb, undisturbed for well over 3,000 years. Carter was the first to peer inside the small opening that they had made in the brickwork, and what he saw by candlelight made him gasp. Carnarvon asked him what was inside. Carter replied with the now famous words, "Wonderful things." And indeed they were, as these colour-enhanced photographs from the time reveal. Amongst them, gold, silver and jewel-encrusted treasures entombed with the pharaoh in the belief he could use them in the afterlife. And the walls were decorated with inscriptions and paintings depicting the king's funeral and his journey to the next world. And there was the mummy itself, preserved inside a nest of 3 coffins, its face covered with a solid gold death mask made in the likeness of the young king when he died. Subsequent research has dated the tomb to around 1320 BC, and forensic analysis has shown that the young pharaoh died in his late teens, possibly due to a skull fracture from a fall. But the tomb that concerns us here was discovered 15 years before, cut into the rock on the opposite side of the valley. The find was made by archaeologist Edward Ayrton and his backer Theodore Davis in 1907. An intact seal on the entrance portal, made by the priests when the tomb was closed, shows that it had remained unrobbed, undisturbed and undiscovered since the mid-14th century BC, very close to the time of Tutankhamun's death. Yet what they found inside was far removed from the wonderful things later found in Tutankhamun's tomb. The place had been completely ransacked, with broken funerary items lying throughout the tomb chambers, and none of the treasures later found in Tutankhamun's final resting place. There was no evidence that the tomb had ever been robbed, no secret tunnels or openings. This, it seems, is how the priests who had sealed the tomb had deliberately intended it to remain. However, the mummy, still in its coffin, survived intact. From the hieroglyphics on the coffin, the pharaonic beard and cobra headdress, the occupant was revealed to have been a pharaoh who had been entombed around 1340 BC, seemingly just before Tutankhamun's reign. But strangely, all evidence of the mummy's identity had been erased. The name had been scratched out of the royal cartouche. All wall paintings had been erased, and weirdest of all, the golden face mask had been ripped away, leaving only one menacing eye. The identity of the occupant remains a mystery. and the tomb is known only by its numerical designation, KV55. Analysis has since revealed that the walls had once been decorated with the traditional paintings and inscriptions deemed necessary to assure the occupant a safe passage to the next life. But all had been erased, and broken fragments of funerary items found littered about indicated that the tomb may once have been filled with similar treasures to Tutankhamun's tomb. The conclusion: an ancient Egyptian pharaoh had once been interred here in a similar fashion to Tutankhamun's burial, but within a few years the tomb had been reopened, funerary goods removed, and the place deliberately desecrated by the high priests, presumably on the orders of a new pharaoh, and then officially resealed. With the mummy left inside. But why? If a pharaoh had been posthumously discredited, then the mummy should have been destroyed. Why leave it in the tomb? In ancient Egyptian belief, so long as the mummified body remained intact, so would its spirit. But without the necessary wall paintings and certain grave goods, it would remain earthbound, unable to ascend or reincarnate. And by resealing the tomb, the spirit would remain trapped inside. In short, KV55 was not so much a final resting place, but an eternal prison for the soul. 4 years before Ayrton's discovery, author Bram Stoker had published his novel The Jewel of the Seven Stars, which concerned the reanimation of a vengeful mummy. He said that within the tomb, built to contain its malevolent spirit, were written the words, "The evil one must not live again." It seems somewhat prophetic, as this appears to have been the very motive of the priests who sealed KV55. So, who could the mysterious occupant be? From the dating, most likely a recent predecessor of Tutankhamun. Possibility 1. Shortly before Tutankhamun's reign, the pharaoh of Egypt was Akhenaten, who angered the priesthood by adopting a new religion which revered a single god. But it seems unlikely, as his desecrated tomb has been discovered elsewhere. Possibility 2. Some have suggested that a woman seized power for a while after Akhenaten's death, and that the mummy in KV55 is her, Akhenaten's wife, Nefertiti, who may have ruled as co-pharaoh with her husband and shared his religious beliefs. By the hairstyle, the coffin does seem to depict a woman. The beard, incidentally, is symbolic and has been found adorning statues of Egypt's few female rulers, such as Queen Hatshepsut. However, there are examples of men being depicted with female hairstyles in ancient Egyptian art. Moreover, modern advances in forensic analysis have revealed the remains to be those of a male in his early 20s. Which leaves us with the most likely possibility. Akhenaten and Nefertiti produced no male heir, meaning that whoever married their eldest daughter, Meritaten, would become pharaoh. Her husband was one Smenkhare. His background remains a mystery, as many records concerning this dynasty were destroyed by the incensed priesthood once the old religion was reinstated during Tutankhamun's reign. Tutankhamun, by the way, was an equally enigmatic figure, becoming pharaoh by marriage to another of Akhenaten's daughters, Ankhesenamun. But if Smem-Kare was indeed the mummy in KV 55, why was he so despised? It just so happens that the short time he ruled is the likely period the Bible places the Exodus, when Egypt was said to have been beset by a succession of devastating plagues. According to the Old Testament, 40 years after the plagues of Egypt, the Israelites conquered the city of Jericho. And in 1996, scientists carbon dated the evidence for the fall of Jericho to around 1300 BC, meaning that the Exodus events, perhaps a series of natural catastrophes interpreted as acts of God, occurred around 1340 BC, precisely the time that Egypt was ruled by Smem-Kare. The ancient Egyptians often deemed national calamities the fault of their divine ruler, the pharaoh, and, if the Bible in any way reflects historical events, the Exodus plagues were about as calamitous as things could get. Was Smem-Kare none other than the Exodus pharaoh, a king that the priesthood ultimately punished for failing his nation, believing that they had imprisoned his immortal spirit for all eternity in the tomb known as KV 55?